Ayo, back at it again with another video. Thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. So, last video I did on the Ukraine war was the second battle of Kursk. So, that was the last video on my last Ukraine war update video. And this video is talking about a front collapse in the Donbass. So, I was reading this article from the Kyiv Post, situation in Donbass spiraling out of control. And this is from a brigade officer from Azov. Roman Ponomarenko warns that our front in Donbass has collapsed. There's a paramedic whose nickname is Birdie, predicts that Pokrovsk has a few weeks left. So I was reading this, and if you look at the map, the deep state map, the map more or less agrees with that scenario, because if you look, ever since the fall of Avdiivka, I believe that was January, February, the Russians have had serious advances, and it's looking like a bulge in the line. The Russians are pushing towards Pokrovsk, and I think they're on the outskirts of Horodivka. If I'm mispronouncing it, I'm sorry. But yeah, they're on the outskirts of Horodivka, and probably we're gonna look up Google Maps. So here's Pokrovsk. Horodivka right here. So more or less, the Russian front line is approaching Horodivka and along this two lakes, a little creek over here. So the Russian line is on the outskirts of Horodivka, and I believe this is the H-32 highway. So if the Russian line is straddling this creek with these two rivers right here, that would put them, I believe, like 5 miles, only 3 miles from this major highway. So this is where the Russians are right now. The Ukrainians are bottlenecking them in this area. But if the Russians are able to break through, that means that they're only about 3 miles from this major highway between Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka, all the way up to Chasiv Yar and Bakhmut. So, major highway, if the Russians are able to sever that, then that would severely hamper Ukrainian logistics in the region. Obviously, there's still ways of getting reinforcements and equipment and personnel to Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka. You just have to go, if you're looking at these major roads, you have to go north towards Sloviansk, Kramatorsk. If the Russians are able to sever that highway from Pokrovsk to Konstantinivka, then that would hamper Ukrainian logistics. But also, Pokrovsk is I believe, a major railroad depot. I believe it's pre-war population of about 50 to 60,000. You got 3 or 4 major roads on Pokrovsk. That's an important logistics hub for Ukraine, because right now the Russians, after destroying and capturing Avdiivka, they've really been pushing towards Pokrovsk. There's been battle in Chasiv Yar up here. The Russians have been making slow gains there. So there's a small bulge in the line right here around Chasiv Yar, but there's a really big bulge right here, Toretsk to Horodivka, and then this bulge right here. So, and that really emphasizes the situation is kind of spiraling out of control. because the map would definitely more or less agree with that. Because if the Ukrainians are allowing the Russians to really push and are able to take Pokrovsk or able to sever that major highway link, then that would really hamper logistics, really hamper potential troop movements to Konstantinivka. You know, what I'm worried about is a potential push south and a complete Ukrainian encirclement. That is something that is concerning for sure. If the Russians are able to push south further and really link up these two fronts, then there would be an encirclement. But it looks like the Russians are pushing towards Krasnyar, Horodivka, potential push along this creek river bend. So there's a massive push by the Russians. They're pushing along more or less 3 axes in the Donbass. Up here have had some success. They've had some success around Chasiv Yar, more or less, but the big success for the Russians lately is this right here, Ocheretne, Hordivka, and pushing towards Pokrovsk. So this paramedic predicts Pokrovsk has a few weeks left. If Pokrovsk falls to Russian forces, then that would be not a good sign, because that would provide the Russians with major road and rail links that can push northwards and even push westward towards the Dnipro River. So that's the state of the battle there. I haven't talked too much about the incursion into Kursk. There is sizable territory the Ukrainians have been able to capture. I'm not sure how the Ukrainians will be able to hold that long term, but we will see. So that's going on. At the same time, the Russians are really pushing in the Donbass, because it looks like Ukraine pulled a lot of their troops from the Donbass for this Kursk incursion. So, very interesting developments in the Russo-Ukrainian war. So, that is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Deuces.